It's time to make your great escape, and heaven knows you need a break. Forget your duties, forget your cares. It's good to get away.
We're just making a few casts here for some largemouth bass in this pond. I think almost anyone who's ever fished around Georgia has probably caught a largemouth bass before. It's kind of a favorite with fishermen. They get big, they fight hard. But today we're going to be talking with a gentleman named Bill Babb about a very, very special bass that you will not catch in a Georgia lake, at least not today. It was landed here in the state of Georgia back in 1932, and it became the world record largemouth bass. That's a record that's lived on for 81 years as of last month. And the more time that goes by, it seems like the stranger the story of this fish becomes, and the more mysteries there are about trying to figure out exactly what the details were when that fish was caught. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about that very special fish. Hey Bill, how are you? Thank you, sir. How are you?
Good to see you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the new things that we're still finding out about the world record bass 81 years later. And I understand that you had a very interesting surprise on the 81st anniversary when that fish was caught. You want to tell us about it?
Well, I was checking out my emails, as I always do, and all of a sudden this thing comes up with a picture attached to it. I opened the picture, enlarged it, and it was this.
Is that a photo you had never seen before?
I had never seen this particular photo. I've got a bunch of photos of George Perry and family members, things of that nature, but I had never seen this thing. And the message with it says happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. So the sender obviously knew the significance of the day.
Right. Well, on this thing is in pen or in ink is June 2nd, 1932, which is the day that Mr. Perry caught the bass.
Going back to that day in June in 1932, Perry went fishing that day. My understanding from reading your book and your accounts is that it was raining, he was a farmer, couldn't work in the fields. What was he fishing with? That's always the biggest question when somebody catches the record fish. What was he casting that day?
Well, for years it was thought that he used a creek chub wigglefish and perch scale.
Right.
And turned out not to be. It was a creek chub fin-tailed shiner and shiner scale.
And Bill, going back so far in time to a fish that became so famous as bass fishing and tournaments, it just grew into a multi-billion-dollar industry that it is today. Up until your book came out, but as a writer, a lot of times people would say, well, I just don't know if that was really, that might have been some, country bumpkin making stuff up. But how was that fish documented, and was it ever mounted, or I presume it was not, since there are no photos, or at least very few.
It got it.
That's what happened to big fish in Georgia
right.
in 1932.
And it fed the Perry family, which consisted of his mother, a sister, a brother, and a brother's family, and George. Fed him for 3 days. Now, given the fact that the refrigerator was probably an ice box, there's no telling what that fish tasted like the third day. But he had gardens up there. He had tomatoes and corn and all that stuff to go with it. So he was out there fishing for food and not for fun to begin with. The thing was so well documented by Field and Stream, which at that time was the record keeper. The International Game Fish Association has taken that chore over for both salt and freshwater.
Where was the fish weighed?
The fish was weighed at the post office in Helena, Georgia. It was actually weighed, taken into a grocery store where George's cronies were hanging out, you know, the spit and whittle gang, as they used to call them.
Yeah.
And somebody knew about the contest. George didn't. I'm sure that he didn't have enough money to subscribe to the magazine. Anyway, they said, you need to have that thing certified. So the post office in Helena was the only place that had certified scales at that time. And so he took it across the streets of the post office and had it weighed and measured. And I don't recall the measurements, but weight, of course, was 22.4. And we still have doubting Thomases today, but I don't worry about them. In my own mind, I feel like George caught the fish. He never bragged about it, but somebody in North Carolina made a fiberglass mount replica of the thing, which you've seen, and brought it down to the Brunswick Air Park. George put it was mounted, of course, and he put it up on the wall, and his fellow pilots couldn't believe the size of that thing. One kid said, I could put my head in there and still have plenty of room. Must have been a small kid.